I've already been talking with Jerry Craft for a while, and we've covered a lot of topics. And
yeah, so goodbye, everyone. Thanks.
we're all done.
Sorry you missed it.
We're going to probably talk about them again. And I just want to say my name's Andrea. I'm the manager of youth services at Idea Exchange. And I am so thrilled to introduce Jerry Craft, a New York Times best-selling and Newbery Medal-winning author of the graphic novel New Kid. And his second graphic novel, Class Act, was just published in October of 2020. Craft is also the creator of Mama's Boyz, an award-winning comic strip which won the African American Literary Award 5 times. And he is co-founder of the, sorry, Jerry, is it Schomburg Center's annual Black Comic Book Festival. So welcome. We are so excited to have you here. I just want to say a couple things. First of all, if you want to get your hands on New Kid and Class Act, and I highly suggest you do, Veronica's going to put in the chat a link to the bookshelf, which is a local bookstore that you can order them from. We also have lots of copies here at Idea Exchange that you can put a hold on. I highly recommend these as some holiday gifts because they are fantastic books. I just have one question, Jerry, before we get started. You won the Newbery Medal and you made history with that because this is the first graphic novel ever to win this medal. So how did you feel when you found out? Do you remember?
Of course I remember. You know, I might remember a few details, like it was 6:42 a.m. on January 27th. But other than that, no. No, it was amazing. I didn't know what to expect. You know, like I had heard rumors that if you win, you get a call anywhere from like 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. It was always like really, really early. And, you know, I remember waking up at 6 a.m. and I'm like staring up at the ceiling, and I really didn't know what to expect because, I mean, there have been some great graphic novels, you know, when you look at the Raina Telgemeyers and the Victoria Jamesons and the C.C. Bells and Jerry Kruszewska and people like that. And it's like, okay. And this was like my first opportunity to really shine on a big stage. So I thought, you know, I might have to earn my dues and build up, you know. And I knew that it was doing well in a lot of mock Newberries, you know. So the mock Newberries are, you know, when schools do them. So I knew kids liked them, but I didn't know what kind of critical acclaim, you know, what you adults and librarians would think of it. You know, I knew kids loved it. So that was the kind of thing that I was like, okay, let's see what's going to happen, you know? And yeah, so when I got that call, and then it took a few months to dawn on me, you know, like someone might say, hey, you know, it's the first graphic novel ever to win. It's like, oh, great. And then you look up and it's like, wow, you're the 5th African-American author in 98 years to win. And I'm like, you know, it's like, okay, who are the others? And it's like Kwame Alexander, who we all know and love. Mm-hmm. And then one of my favorite books to read to my sons was Bud Not Buddy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so it's the second book to ever win the Newbery and the Coretta Scott King Author Award, joining Bud Not Buddy. So that gave me chills to think of all the times when I read that to my sons, you know, my sons as, you know, kids sitting on my lap while I'm reading that and seeing those two symbols, the two stickers, which I didn't really know what they were. Yeah. And then to think that my book would be the second book ever. Like if someone had told me that when I finished that book, like, your book is going to be the second book ever to have both of those medals on. Like, that's just not something that was really fathomable, you know? And then yeah, just a lot of things like that, you know, of going into a bookstore for the first time and they have like the award section that has, you know, Holes and But Not Buddy and, you know, Hugo Cabaret and this one and that one, that it will be in that shelf forever,
Oh yeah.
you know. And I will say that it's not over yet because the thing that I'm waiting for is that big library poster that has the Newbery winners. So the fact that I'll be able to frame that
Oh
and
yeah.
Coretta Scott King one and put them like next to each other, that's going to be like the last one that's just like a.
Now, I happen to know from our earlier conversation that you have the Newbery sitting next to you.
I do. All right. So it came in the, you know, I didn't get to go to Chicago to make the speech, so I got it in the mail, but it was still very nice because I got to do this with the music and then just. So it is an actual medal.
Wow.
And I will take it out just for you.
Ah.
All right, so this is the actual medal. So it looks just like the sticker on the book,
Yeah.
and then it's two-sided. So on the back, you got this kind of thing going on.
Amazing.
You know, yeah. So I was thinking of doing like the Vision in Avengers, and maybe putting like this. You know.
You should definitely do that. Yeah.
Tony Stark kind of getting it like this. So if I ever couldn't get into the library, I just like do this. Oh, there's the crafts. Step right in. You know, and I get to hang out in the librarian lounge that has all the good snacks and stuff like that. You know, if I have an overdue book, they waive it. You know.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, that's you know.
So I wanted to start with New Kid and talk a little bit about Jordan.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's a lot of classes here, and I bet a lot of them have read it already, but Jordan travels from Washington Heights every day to a private school in Riverdale.
Yep.
And talks a lot about sort of balancing those worlds that he lives in. How much of the character of Jordan do you relate to?
A lot. You know, like so much of it was me. You know, I wanted to be an artist, and my parents did not want me to be an artist. And, you know, I grew up in Washington Heights, and you know, I wanted to go to art school. And my parents like, no, because the only thing that they had ever heard was the term starving artist. You know, so they just thought that, you know, I would never be able to have a career as an artist, and that I'd be living in their basement until I was 60 years old. But I hope to move out soon, you know. And so there's a lot of stuff like that really is between that and also my two sons, you know, who also went to private school. And so I got to experience it. I did go to school in Riverdale, just like Jordan Banks, so that's not made up. So I experienced it 4 years as a student, and then about 13 years as a dad.
Wow, yeah.
You know, so even Jordan's house is the house where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is a brownstone in Washington Heights, and this is my room right here.
Oh my gosh.
Up here. And we lived on the top floor. And, you know, I just thought it was interesting because I wanted to do what I could to stop the, you know, there's like a one-story narrative, like that single-story narrative that every young Black kid is struggling and either lives in Compton or the south side of Chicago. And, you know, there's gangs and there's this and there's that. And I mean, me and my friends played stickball and skateboard and rode bikes and made up games and pretended to be Spider-Man. And, so I just want to give as big of a different slice of life than most people will see when they talk about African American life.
Mm-hmm. So you do address a lot of issues of racism, from microaggressions to discrimination in the book New Kid and Class Act. And in fact, Class Act deals a lot with class, as in the name, in the title. So can you discuss with us the importance of writing about these topics in your books and why it's important for kids' books?
As much as people think that, we're adults and we're mature and we can talk about anything, it is, like nobody listens anymore. Like if you say, oh, it's hard to be a woman in, say, the library industry, right? My first thing a lot of times guys go, oh, what do you know? If you work hard, all you got to do is roll up your sleeves and put your head down. But I don't know. Like if you have actual experience and you're like, listen, I've been, and I hope I won't get you in trouble. This is anything that you shared with me. I'm just making this up. I've been passed over 5 times for promotion and I blah, blah, blah. And they gave me the smallest office. Then, it's up to me to listen and go, oh, wow. Okay. And I can be more empathetic. And then that changes my view. So if I'm ever hiring and, there's a female candidate with a better resume and a male that I don't just click into what's natural. Oh, I'll just hire the guy. I'm like, oh, well, wait a minute. She's way more qualified. And hey, here's a novel thing. Let me pay her the same salary that I would have paid him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I wanted to create a sense of empathy that most people don't necessarily have with Black kids, because if you look at what you see on TV, again, the big three of like, the movies and a lot of books, slavery, civil rights, and police brutality, if that is so far from your reality that you don't really have a bond, like if you watch the movie on, say, Harriet Tubman, you're not feeling like you're Harriet Tubman. It's not a mirror per se. You're looking, it's a great movie or it's this or that. But I wanted Jordan and Drew to be like, if they hurt, you hurt.
Yeah.
Or the next time a Black kid comes into your library, you don't think that you have to give them the mean streets of South Uptown, that you can say, hey, here's New Kid, and hashtag no one dies, like, spoiler, because maybe you're not all looking for that kind of stuff, that we have forced it on you.
So that's actually, I wanted to bring that up because you have a book within a book. Actually, there's so many things. I have so many, but you have a book within a book of the mean streets of South Uptown.
Right.
It comes up again and again, where librarians and teachers are always trying to give the kids of color this book.
Right.
And I just want to ask, like, that gives these kids only just one narrative, and it's not necessarily full of joy and adventure. So do you have any advice for educators and librarians like us when selecting and recommending books for kids?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of, like, I've had so many great conversations with librarians. Like one time a librarian was mad at me and said, I love the book, but you really should have made the librarian like know what she was doing, and boom, and and everything, she solved the problem. And then other librarians like, you know what? I remember a little girl came to me and she read The Hate U Give and she loved it. And she said, do you have anything else like it? And I gave her another like police brutality book. And she's like, you know what? She didn't want that. She wanted another book with a smart female African-American protagonist who used her brains and did this and did that. So when I read your book, New Kid, I realized that I just thought she wanted the violent book, you know. And she says, I will forever change the way that I think about that, you know. So it's not that they aren't important books, but I think that there's a disproportionate amount of books on historical figures, slavery, civil rights, police brutality. And not that they aren't important, because they are, but to me, any book that a kid reads 3 times on their own is an important book.
Yes.
You know, so you can't tell me in my house that Diary of a Wimpy Kid wasn't an important book, because my sons each wanted their own copy. They were racing to finish it. What page are you on? I'm on 52. Oh, I'm on 49. Okay. You know, you wake up, you go to wake them up in the morning for school, and it's at the foot of their bed. So they were reading it before they went to bed. They're reading it at breakfast. They're reading in the car. How is that not important?
Yeah, it's
You know?
absolutely important.
And
I was telling you that my 7-year-old is really into Dog Man right now.
right.
And I know a lot of kids really gravitate towards graphic novels. And that wasn't necessarily encouraged in the past as good reading, you know, and perhaps not as many people went into writing graphic novels. So do you have any advice for kids out there that are really drawn to writing and drawing graphic novels?
You know, they're real reading, you know, and I don't have to say anything. I just need to show you the head again. You know?
Right.
So now, as a reluctant reader, which I was until I was an adult.
Were you?
Yeah, absolutely. Going to the library was if I had a term paper, but to go for fun, and my library in Washington Heights, around the corner from where Jordan Banks lives, was like a mausoleum. Like, I just felt like you go there and the books were all in plastic, and the desk was covered in plastic, and the librarian was covered in plastic, and everything was like this, you know. And, you know, you go in and the door squeaks, so,
oh my God.
and everyone looks at you, and it's like, it was awkward, you know. And I went back there last year, and there's computers, and there's life, and there's colors, and there's kids. I'm like, wow. But so I had no librarian. I had no library. I had no one saying, oh, okay, here's a book about a boy like you, you know. So I went into video games.
Yeah.
You know, because reading was just not, if I wasn't reading Spider-Man or X-Men the Silver Surfer, it wasn't interesting. And then the so-called classics that I had to read in high school, any kid that looked like me in a classic book was not having a good day.
Oh, right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to, oh, wow, I wish that was me running from a pack of dogs.
No.
You know, oh, I wish that was me, you know. So I played video games, you know. I could read, because reading Marvel Comics, my vocabulary of reading about annihilation and Armageddon and devastation, but they were still monosyllabic words, you know. So I could read, but they never gave me anything that I wanted to read. I didn't have a New Kid or a Rebound or, you know, a Jason Reynolds book or, you know, Renee Watson or, you know, Octopus Stew or something like that was just like fun books.
Well, speaking of having something for everyone, New Kid and Class Act, they have little Easter eggs, I would call them, in your chapter titles. because these books are so fantastic. It's about a grade 7 and then grade 8 class, but there's something for adults in there too, and librarians. I just have to show some of these things. Like, for instance, the Riverdale chapter, which definitely looks a lot like Lord of the Rings to me.
Why, yes, it does. So that is because again, like I remember as a parent going to see, taking my sons to see a cartoon. And if it was like Shrek, it was great because I laughed as much as they did.
Yeah.
But then there were other ones that were like, oh my goodness, how much longer is it? And it's like, Dad, it hasn't even come on yet. It's opening credits. So I wanted to put a lot of Easter eggs in that. So with that is the road. So the Hobbit was the road to Rivendell, there and back again.
Yeah.
So I did the road to Riverdale, there and back again. So the crossed swords, you got crossed T-squares, and here's the same pose that the Hobbit had, but of course with Jordan Banks, I made a lacrosse stick with a question mark, and instead of the map of the Shire in Middle Earth in the back, yes, I know my Lord of the Rings, it's going from Washington Heights to Riverdale. So I wanted to put like just a lot of fun things like that someone like you would look at and kind of giggle.
And I definitely did. And I want to go back into that in a minute. But this chapter, I was really struck by how much persona switching that Jordan had to do just getting to school on the bus from Washington Heights to Riverdale. And is that something that you brought in from your own life, having to feel like you were different in different situations?
Oh, absolutely. And I have to be honest, like you never stop being Jordan Banks.
Huh.
And what I mean by that is, when I was a kid, so I grew up in a neighborhood all Black and Latinx. So all my friends were dark skinned with afros, and I was smaller than most, straight hair, light skin. So, speaking the way that I did and going to private schools, sometimes it gets like, oh, how come you talk like that? Or you think you're all that? Or you think because you go to this fancy school. Then you go to Fieldston, which is my private school, where it was now, instead of 25 Black kids in my class, it was 110 kids, of which 10 of us were African American. And maybe half of those kids had been there their whole lives. So that's where I got the Maury character from, where although we're both African American, we have nothing in common whatsoever. So now there, I'm the Black kid, oh, he's from tough neighborhood and he's from this and he's from that. So it's just going back and forth, and even today, and, I am going to tell you, make sure you're sitting down because you will cringe, because this is a cringeworthy story that I went to a school and I'm like, I'm going to do the school. This is before New Kid.
Okay.
But, I still did like 30 books beforehand. They paid me to come to school. I'm like, okay. And I was, hi, I'm Jerry Kraft. Oh, we've been waiting for you. I'm like, oh, great. And they take me, come on, follow me. And I'm like, okay, and the door opens. I'm expecting to see 400 screaming kids. And it was a little office. And I'm like, what is this? Oh. And I look and she looks and I look and I'm like, she goes, aren't you here to fix the copier? And I'm like, no, I'm the author that you're paying me to. I told you you'd cringe.
I'm cringing. It's horrible.
Yeah. And literally right before the COVID quarantine, I was in a library that was, they had like the Friends of the Library and they're selling like books for like $1 or $2. And the woman was like, oh, I'll be out front if you need me. I said, okay. And I'm walking around and she comes in, oh, can I help you? No, just look. Okay. Comes back, oh, did you see it? No, listen, I know you said you'll be outside. And she goes over to the security guard, like, oh, if you need anything, if he needs anything, tell him. I'm like, you know, so then she comes back like, do you have a new kid? Oh no, who's the author by? Me?
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
it won the Newbery. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I'm not here to steal your $2 books that are like out of circulation. You know, but that kind of stuff is why I could do 1,000 new kids and class acts, and there's unfortunately always new stuff that's happening, you know.
Well, and what I find so wonderful about your writing and your drawing is that you bring these issues out into the forefront, um, but you also bring such great humor and joy. It's joyful to read your books, and it's interesting, and there's lots of layers to it. So, can you talk to us a little bit about finding that balance? Like, how do you put these really deep-rooted issues in with joy?
It's like you know, having to give your puppy medicine and
Yeah.
you wrap it around a piece of bacon. You know, so on the surface you guys all getting yummy bacon unless you're vegetarian, and I put in a piece of something else, you know.
So,
But then as you are, you know, you finish the book, it's like, wow, wait a minute, wow, there was some stuff in there. Let me
yeah,
read that a second time.
yeah.
But I knew, and I'm so conditioned. I had to break a lot of stuff on my own, right? One was I was conditioned to think that only African American readers read books about African American protagonists. You know, so when we were chatting in the green room earlier, I told you back in, you know, in 1997, I had to self-publish this. This is my very first book that I ever did, Mama's Boys as American Sweet Potato Pie. It's a collection of comic strips. But, you know, the mom owned a bookstore and the kids worked in the bookstore, and, you know, like it's fun stuff, just nothing bad, no gangs, no drugs, no. And I could not get it published. And I think that, you know, it was like, hey, well, we don't have many Black readers, or we don't know this, or we don't service those areas. So it was really drilled in my head that only Black readers read books with, you know, and to a degree, it's true that that's how people think, because it's like, I can wear a T-shirt with Charlie Brown, but you don't see anyone who's not Black wearing Black characters, you know, because a lot of them don't really even make it to that kind of mainstream. You know, in my lifetime, it's been Fat Albert, you know, and not a superhero, so not Miles Morales or not Black Panther, but there really is no Black Wimpy Kid, Dogman, Captain Underpants, Percy Jackson.
Well, there it is now.
Right. But it's 2020, you know
I
what
know.
I mean?
Exactly. It's 2020.
So it shouldn't be groundbreaking,
No.
but it is by process of elimination. I mean, I put the work in, so I'm not completely discounting what I brought to it, but it's also a process of elimination that what am I competing against in a sense, you know?
Well, and when we talked in the green room too, you showed me the stack of self-published books that you had
Yeah.
before New Kid.
Yeah. So this will be my cardio for the day. But people think that I'm like new to the scene, but this is like
Yeah.
like 36 books that I have either published myself or helped other people to publish. And they are, you know, books like Khalil's Way, Danica Germanica, and Just Because. So some of them are picture books. Some are, you know, I did Mommy's Boys in Living Color as a graphic novel to see if I could do New Kid, because I didn't know if I could do a 250-page graphic novel.
Right.
So I figured if I did one in 96 pages, and got the word balloons, and I created my own font out of my handwriting. So I really saw if I could do it. And when I realized I could do it, then I said, okay, now instead of, you know, a 100-page book, I have to do it 3 times as long to make it New Kid. You know, so there's just a lot of rejection and
Well,
stuff
I was
that
just
went.
going to ask, I mean, that takes so much tenacity and just determination to continue on after essentially that much rejection
Yeah.
to this Newbery Award winner.
It's kind of funny though, because some of my backlists, like The Offenders, Saving the World While Serving Detention, I've sold more copies of this since New Kid came out than I did in the 5 years of struggling and knocking door to door and stuff like this, you know, because I actually wrote this with my sons when they were in middle school. So it's like 5 middle grade kids who are kind of the bullies of this school. They get zapped, they get these superpowers, and instead of looking cool like Spider-Man or Deadpool, they look like the kids that they pick on. So one gets really tiny, one gains like 50 pounds, one gets super thin. And, you know, again, it's just like fun stuff. But now people are like, oh, let's see what else Terry Craft has done. You know, so
yeah.
that and like the Mama's Boys books are probably selling better now than I did when they were first published.
So you, Jordan is continually sketching in all of your books. Like you show his sketches in his sketchbook, which I just love. Was that you too? Were you sketching all the time? Were you doodling? Has this been a lifetime sort of obsession for you?
Well, let me answer by doing this. As long as you ask, there is nothing I would like better right now to do than to kind of doodle while we talk. So how's that?
I would love that.
So with this, what I do is this is in Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to start with just big, bold shapes. And initially, they won't even make sense at the beginning, you know, but I'm going to get like this little shape like that, and then kind of on a rectangle, and then you won't even know what this is at the beginning, and then here's like a triangle, and here's a square, and there's a rectangle, and then there's some stuff there. So I'm going to keep doing this, and then I can actually multitask.
Wow.
And answer questions as you know, and I'll be able to focus on both.
Very talented. So I have a question here from Sarah Hyatt, who's watching. She has a 10-year-old biracial granddaughter who she says needs to be drawn in more. And she takes her to the bookstore every time we meet, but she doesn't know how to direct her. She says she's a teacher and she loves children's picture books. How do I encourage her to be more inquisitive about reading?
I'm sorry, what did you say I was drawing? I'm kidding. You know, okay, so with me, I used every opportunity I could to get my sons to read. So for example, they were and still are gamers, you know. So, you know, they're 22 and 20 now, and, you know, Black Friday, we were looking for that new Xbox that just came out. So, you know, that hasn't changed. And so there was a magazine called Game Informer. And so I subscribed to it. So whenever a new game came out, or when the new book came out, the new edition, they read it cover to cover, you know, and that wasn't something that I had to tell them to do, because, you know, they wanted to know. So they knew everything. Like, all right, Dad, you know, the new Sonic game is coming out, and it's this and it's that, and they knew the designers, they just knew everything about it, you know. It was like really, really cool. So, you know, you really can't force kids to read. And, you know, one of the problems that I think I had in school was that a lot of my teachers thought that comic books, because this is before the term graphic novels, you know, so comics are just the smaller ones, were just kind of, they would rot your brain, and, you know, nothing good came of it. So I grew up thinking that you couldn't enjoy a book, that, you know, it's just for information
Huh.
and not, you know, so I never sat down with a good book. I sat down to learn something. You know, I could sit down and read a 500-page book on Adobe Photoshop, but I would never sit down and read, you know, a Harry Potter book, you know, literally until I was an adult, and then started reading to my kids, and also having, you know, author friends. It's like, oh, I met Kwame Alexander. Now I'm going to have to read his book because he's going to be like, hey, I read your book. Did you read mine? You know, no. So it's like, okay. Uh, so, you know what I mean? So you can't force the issue, but if you can find books that are, you know, what the kids are interested in already, you know, like, again, my kids and I used to go camping a lot, and there was a book that every time we went camping, we would take out of the library because it had, you know, about the stuff you can eat and the different plants and the different animals and things like that, you know. So I think that's probably the best thing, is to find interest already and then look for the book, as opposed to just going and finding a random book and hope that you hit the jackpot.
So New Kid really follows Jordan, which you said is loosely based on yourself and your kids.
Yep.
And then Class Act really gets more into the lives of Drew and Liam. Was that a different process, writing Class Act, because it wasn't quite based on yourself?
Yeah, it definitely was more things that I had seen rather than things that I had experienced, you know, and also, again, empathy to kids that don't traditionally foster a lot of empathy. So, for example, I was at a school, and there was a young Black kid, very nice kid, teenager, and one of the teachers were like, hey, you know, whatever the kid's name is, you know, if you really want, I will buy you a copy of New Kid and you could take it home. And the kid was like, well, thanks, but no thanks. And she was like, what? You know, he's like, miss, I can't be seen with no book in my neighborhood. And so when you think about it, you know, if you don't listen to why, you may just chalk it up as he's, you know, not grateful, he really doesn't like to read, he this, that, and just write that kid off. And I just wanted people to take an extra second. Again, nobody talks, you know, well, why don't you want it? Oh, well, you know, if they see me with a book in my neighborhood, that means I'm soft, and they may try to beat me up, which is a big change from, you know, he just doesn't want to learn and doesn't want, you know.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, what's the solution? Well, maybe, you know, we buy you the book and we mail it to your house, or you come here, and for 20 minutes each day, I will read the book with you in the library, or just something, as
Yeah.
opposed to just writing the kid off.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I wanted to do. And I took stories like that to kind of make Drew in particular, and even Jordan's friends from around his block, as being more empathetic. So they're not just like, you know, oh, okay, you know?
Absolutely. And then I wanted to get to that in Class Act, whereas New Kid has some Easter eggs in it as well. Like I was showing one of my favorites for adults. You've got the Mad Men reference.
Mm-hmm.
Radman. And then in class act, you have lots of different graphic novel nods to
Yes.
your fellow authors, a homage.
Yes.
So why'd you do that?
You know, it was really to build up the industry, I guess, to build up the format of graphic novels, and also as a way of saying thanks to the Raina Telgemeyers and the Jeff Kennys and Jerry Krzyzewska and Victoria Jameson and people like that who, you know, when I was the new kid, you know, in publishing, kind of, hey, what do you need to know? And, you know, Jeff Kinney wrote a cover blurb for New Kid, which, you know, I couldn't imagine it being better than having Jeff Kinney, the cover blurb, your first book.
Amazing.
You know, like that is not too bad, you know? So I really just wanted to, you know, say thanks to those people. And, you know, winning the Newbery, again, not discounting the work that I put into it, but it's also the years of, wow, you know, did you read Raina Telgemeyer's book? Yeah. You know, did you read El Defo? Did you? Yeah, you know, and them doing the work to even have it in a conversation.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, you know what? Maybe we are ready to give a Newbery to a graphic novel.
So I have a question from the audience. Did people at your school really forget your name? Because in New Kid, that's a big theme.
Yeah, so that's one of those things that didn't happen to me as much as it happened to my sons and in my son's school. So there really was like a Mr. Garner and a Coach Rick, you know, where they always confused the teachers. And this wasn't kids doing it. This was other teachers that called them by the wrong names, you know, and even though they had been there like a dozen years or something like that, you know. I did have it one time with one of my sons. I don't remember if it was I don't think it was a yearbook, but I think it was a uh, school newsletter. But they either put my son's name with another Black kid's picture or vice versa. So this is in print, you know, and it's like, really, you couldn't take the time to
Wow.
have someone who could actually differentiate them, uh, you know, say, no, that's not this one, that's the other one. But yes, more is based on actual events than I wish
Yeah.
was based on actual events.
Yeah. So as you're, I mean, it's amazing. As I'm talking to you, you're drawing this picture of Jordan, and here it is, just like that.
Just like that.
So when you're dreaming up your books, do you dream it in pictures? Are you more of the graphic and then the author, or do you write the story first, or what's your process?
So my process is basically like with New Kid, and so with New Kid, for example, I always do like my story arc first, right? So this is something that I knew I wanted New Kid to start in September, beginning of 7th grade, and end in June, the last day of 7th grade. And then I had kind of this thing going up, you know, the building action and the climax. And, you know, so the big thing here is kind of the little altercation with Drew and Andy, you know. And then I also knew like September, October, November, December, you know, so I did this and I kind of figured out how the year would change. So everything from sports, where here it would be football season, and here it's basketball season, and here it's baseball season, you know, and then the weather. So I had, you know, fall, and I had winter. And so once I do these kind of things, you know, vacations is a big thing, because in that school, you know, when it's Christmas here, right, then half the class is flying across the world for vacation, where, you know, Jordan and Drew joke about, hey, where did you go for Christmas? Oh, we went to Walmart. You know, but not just anyone. We went to a super Walmart. So, and you know, they use their sense of humor not to feel bad.
Definitely.
You know, so once I have it in that kind of format, then what I do is I kind of go right to the sketch stage. You know, I think about where the words go and what I want them to do. And once I have the words where I want and see the flow, then I start doing the pictures, and I go right into thumbnails, because it's hard for me to do anything without doing the drawing part. You know, so in New Kid, you know, I didn't even know what Miss Rawl looked like, but I knew, you know, as a teacher, or be a woman. Well, that solves it. Please take a seat, Drew, and tell us a few things about yourself. Well, I live by Yankee Stadium with my grandmother, and my favorite subject is math. And here's Jordan staring at him. And then Drew senses him staring at him, and Jordan waves. And then he's like, hey, what's up? And then I had the little angels, you know, jackpot, I know, right? And the little angel guys came because, again, as a Black book, I was very conscious of it not being seen as being angry,
Yeah.
you know, and complaining. So I did as much silly things as possible, like the angels and Alexandra with the sock puppet and things like that, so that I would not, you know, people would not just think of it as like, oh, it's angry. So then when I turn it into final art, you know, I'm always writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting, drawing, redrawing. So now I know what Miss Rawl looks like. Great, that solves it. Please find a seat, Drew, and tell us a few things about yourself. Well, I live in the Bronx with my grandmother, and my favorite subject is math. Jordan is staring. He's looking at the paper. Ashley is texting, probably to Ruby under her desk. His spidey sense goes off. He sees him staring. He looks, but now instead of waving, Jordan turns his head. And now I don't need anything but a question mark. I don't need, hey, why is that kid looking at me? And then he looks down, and then Jordan turns back. So here they would have been friends the first day of school. Here it takes a few weeks, you know, and I have Jordan get to know Liam a little better during that time, as opposed to just hitting it off immediately. You know, so I go from this to that sketch stage, and this sketch is what I send to my agent and my editor.
Amazing. So I can't believe we're almost out of time. We've got New Kid, we've got Class Act, and is there going to be a third?
There is. I am working on it now. I don't have a name for it, but it's coming. I am basically figuring out all the little details for it. And it will not be out next year. So I know I did one book a year for the first two. Then I realized that there are things that I need to do while working on the book, like eat and sleep, you know? So I'm going to try to do that this time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, give me like 2 years.
Okay.
If I surprise you, okay, but you know, don't count on it for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're all going to be looking for it. These books are such a gift. They're joy and a delight, and I've really enjoyed reading them, and I really recommend them to everyone out there to please go out and purchase or borrow these books. It has been a complete pleasure to talk to you and see your drawings. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, I have to show you one more big piece.
Oh, please do. Please do.
I just want to give you this, and I'll show it and I'll let it sink in.
Okay.
Okay, can you see that? So it says Universal Pictures teams up with LeBron James and Maverick Carter's Spring Hill on adaptation of New Kid.
Really?
Maybe. So even with the NBA restart in high gear, LeBron James Spring Hill Entertainment continues to stay busy, building its feature film slate into a dominant presence. We are hearing Universal Pictures has acquired rights to New Kid, the 2019 graphic novel by Jerry Craft, with Spring Hill on board to develop and produce.
That is amazing.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
And I hope that you're going to be heavily involved in writing and being there.
Yes, I will be an executive producer. I'm not going to write the screenplay, but, you know, I'm going to be there.
You're going to be there.
I'm going to be there.
Oh, congratulations. That is so exciting.
So
we have more to look forward to.
Yeah, so I see a couple of people in the chat. How do you reach me? Like, my website is just jerrycraft.com. Everything is very simple. On Twitter, jerrycraft, Instagram, jerrycraft. And yeah, so that's where I am.
Well, again, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. And I know there were a lot of different classrooms out there, grade 7 and grade 8. So they're going to be reading these books and hopefully getting as much joy from it than I did.
There's also an audio book. If the teacher doesn't want to read it out loud, they can like turn the pages, and it has a full cast. So it's really pretty cool. So they can do that and then turn the pages and follow the book, you know. Also good with reluctant readers to kind of follow with it and then stop and then let them read the rest of it on their own. That's also a really good prompt.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you for joining us out there. This has been wonderful and a great way to spend a Thursday afternoon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.